is going to go through the papers, hopefully. You would have all had a copy of these in the running order. I don't really know that it's necessary to go through it in detail.
No, yeah. Can I firstly check? Can everyone watching remotely see and hear us?
Yeah, it's Kevin
Yes.
here. I can hear you, see you. Tommy's giving you a thumbs up too.
On that point, Tommy, what is your surname?
It's Job, J-O-B.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Joe. Those of you who have got a copy of the agenda, you'll see agenda item number 3. It sets out the running order. In some committees, we go into quite a lot of depth. In others, it's where it's set out very well like this. We don't need to go through it all. But the main point for me is that everyone has their opportunity to speak. No one interrupts. If at stages you do want to speak, please ensure you raise your hand. But shortly, the chair will open the meeting. The members of the committee will introduce themselves. I may as well do that now because I'm Craig Davis, the legal advisor. Officers present will also introduce themselves, and other parties can as well. Do we need to do the declaration of interests, and
Yes.
we'll come through that as you deal with it. Is it okay, Chair? You'll note I'll jump to point 6 because you can see that there's representations from responsible authorities. This is for you, the applicants, and Mr. Job. Then, effectively, the responsible authorities, being, for example, the police, training standards, health and safety, planning, others who are here will go first to give their representations. Then any other persons. I noted that within the pack there was a local member who had provided representations. I don't see him here. Licensing officers, is Mr. May? Yes. Okay. I'll deal with that as we get to it. Perhaps Mr. May is taking his time off. I'll check if he's online, which he's not. Nevertheless, they would have provided their representations, and then you, the applicant, you would then set out your application, and the members of the committee will ask questions, and then the chair will invite responsible authorities and other persons to ask questions. That's quite pertinent, actually, and I'll say it now because you'll note from Mr. May's representation, it is question and answer sort of format, which is slightly unorthodox as to how such committees would be dealt with. But there are some pertinent questions within it. So again, the chair's leave, we'll see how we wish to deal with that point. If some of the questions haven't already been answered, because I think they may very well be. And then the applicant, although they've just had their opportunity to put forward their comments and answered questions, you will get an opportunity to finally give closing submissions as well, as will the other parties. Now, we'll go into closed session. The decision of the members and all reasons will be provided within 5 working days of the committee. We'll see how we go, because it may be that members may wish to view the location, i.e. a site visit. Applicants, I had thought that you would have been present today, and perhaps that would have assisted if you were. Nevertheless, if there is cause to have a site visit, we'll deal with that when we get to it as well. There was one other point I was going to make as well. Chair, do you have any?
Do you want me to start? I think we start with the introductions first, and then we're going to the agenda. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to start with the introductions first. I'm Councillor Penn Matthews, and I'll be chairing today. On my right,
Good morning, I'm Samantha Woon, Democratic Services Officer.
And I'm Councillor Cheryl Philpott, Councillor Fischetti. I'm Sandra Joy, Councillor for Uplands and Bryn Mill.
I'm Lindsay Stark. I'm a licensing officer for Swansea Council.
Good morning, I'm Rachel Loosmore, Operational Lead for Licensing.
Nicola Evans, Police Licensing Officer for Swansea City Centre.
Annie Davis, Licensing Officer with Swansea Council.
Good morning, I'm the team leader for licensing, Yvonne Lewis.
Morning, Adrian Johnson. I'm the team leader for pollution control and public health.
Good morning, I'm Tom Price. I'm the Divisional Environmental Health Officer for Pollution Control and Private Sector Housing.
do we have any apologies for absence, please, from the committee?
No apologies, Chair.
Thank you. Any disclosures of personal or prejudicial interest? No?
I am a local ward councillor for the area in which the application has been made.
Yes, applicants or parties, Councillor Joy, yes, is a member for the ward in relation to this application. I see no issue on the round in relation to Councillor Joy sitting here, because I'm sure Councillor Joy will say every application is dealt with on its own merits. The only point would be whether there's any personal or prejudicial interest in it, and that's a matter for you.
Thank you. So we start off the proceedings now then with the applicant. Sorry, the licensing chair. Sorry, I'm all confused.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. I'll now read the report of the Service Manager for the Statutory Licensing Subcommittee for an application for a premises licence. The premises is Swansea Beach, Mumbles Road, Bryn Mill, Swansea, and the exact coordinates are found in your report pack. The applicant is Tunes in the Doon Limited, and it's an application for a new premises licence. An application for a new premises licence was received by this authority on the 11th of October 2023. The applicant has applied for a premises licence to allow the following licensable activities to take place. The application proposes live music, Friday to Sunday, midday to 2300 hours, recorded music, Friday to Sunday, midday to 2300 hours, performance of dance, Friday to Sunday, midday to 2200 hours, anything of a similar description to that falling within live unrecorded music, Friday to Sunday, midday to 2200 hours, late night refreshment, Friday to Sunday, 2300 hours to 2300 hours, sale of alcohol, Friday to Sunday, midday to 2300 hours, and the opening hours would be Friday to Sunday, midday to midnight. The proposed event would be held annually over a period of no more than 3 consecutive days. The event will take place during the period the 1st of April to the 30th of September. The exact dates are to be notified in advance, and the proposed dates for this year's event, like next year's event, would be the 3rd to the 5th of May 2024. A copy of the application and plan is attached at Appendix A to A3, which can be found on page 7 to 42. A copy of the event management plan and risk assessment is at Appendix A4 and A5, which is page 43 to 162 in your pack. The background: the proposed event will take place on Swansea Beach, located between the Secret Bar and Kitchen and the Cenotaph. The exact coordinates are in the report pack. A location plan is attached to Appendix B and B1, which can be found pages 163 to 164. A list of licensed premises in the areas attached at Appendix B, which is on page 165. The promotion of the licensing objectives. The Licensing Act 2003 contains 4 licensing objectives, namely 1, the prevention of crime and disorder, 2, public safety, 3, the prevention of public nuisance, and 4, protection of children from harm. Each of these objectives is of equal importance and the application must demonstrate how they are to be promoted. Conditions which are consistent within the operating schedule and will be attached to the licence if granted are attached to Appendix C, which is on page 169. Relevant representations. Responsible authorities. A. South Wales Police. A representation has been received from South Wales Police. The representation is attached to Appendix D with additional information at Appendix D1, which can be found on page 178 to 183. Pollution Division. A representation has been received from Pollution. This representation is attached to Appendix D2, which is on page 185. Licensing Authority. A representation has been received from the Licensing Authority. The representation is attached to Appendix D3, which is on page 187. Other persons. There has been 2 representations which have been received and they are at Appendix D4, which is on page 190. Policy considerations. Considering this application, members should have regard to the current statement of licensing policy, which can be found at the following link. Guidance issued by the Home Secretary. Members should also have regard to the relevant parts of the current statutory guidance issued by the Home Secretary in August 2023. In particular, number 1, Introduction Chapter 1, 2, Licensing Objectives Chapter 2, 3, Applications for Premises Licence Chapter 8, 4, Determining Applications Chapter 9, 5, Conditions Attached to Premises Licence Chapter 10, 6, Statement of Licensing Policy Chapter 14, 7, Regulated Entertainment Chapter 16. And a link to this can be found, the full guidance can be found at, and it's in your report. Determination of the application. The decision must be based on the individual merits of the application and the representations received, with a view to promoting the licensing objectives outlined in paragraph 5 of the report. In arriving at the decision, members should also have regard to the relevant provisions of the policy and the guidance as previously provided. Reasons must be provided for any departures from the policy or guidance. In reaching the decision, the committee must, having regard to the representations, take steps mentioned below, if any, as it considers appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives. A. Grant the licence subject to 1. Conditions that reflect the operating schedule, modified to such an extent as the authority considers appropriate for promotion of the licensing objectives. Certain regulated entertainment under the Licensing Act 2003 as amended has been deregulated. Where entertainment is deregulated but licensable activities continue to take place on any premises, any licence conditions imposed on a grant of a licence in respect of any deregulated entertainment will be suspended. 2. Any mandatory conditions relevant to the licence. B. Exclude any of the licensable activities to which the application relates. C. Refuse to specify a person in the licence as the premises supervisor. D. Reject the application. And that completes the reason of the report, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Do either the committee have any questions for the officer, please?
Can I ask something on the actual application yet, Chair, or not? I've got a query on something for accuracy. Well, possibly for the officer. No, it's actually in relation to, and I say it is just for accuracy. On page 11, there's it's the provision of regulated entertainment, and you've got G, performances of dance, which isn't ticked. But then I note that on when you look at page 18, and it does say that there is dance. So I just wondered whether, you know, for accuracy, whether G should have actually been ticked, and could we have it amended if necessary?
Well, within the application, as you see on, as you said, on page 18, there is an application for performance of dance. It's included within it. So yes, you're right. But it's not an issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I initially submitted some quite detailed reps. Since that time, I've met with Mr. Instance, who's on the call. So I don't know if you would like me to read my reps as they are, because we have come to agreement on many of the points. So
I think all parties would have had a copy of the report and should have read it and its contents, or the bundle. So I would say that previous comment from you or representations from you are noted. If now you wish to extend or amend what you've said, perhaps you can just deal with it that way. And then the applicant would confirm from his side when, or their side, sorry, when they have their opportunity.
yeah, certainly. So I met with Mr. Instance a couple of weeks ago, after he reached out to me, and we have broadly agreed on the following points. Number one, the South Wales Police would support an amended application for a time-limited event, i.e. for 1 year. We would view that very much as a test event, because it is, something which hasn't happened locally before. So we would very much welcome a one-off test event. Number two, we've discussed changing one of the conditions. It's condition 2 under prevention of crime and disorder, to read the following: the premises licence holder will honour all reasonable requests by South Wales Police to engage the services of special police services. Number 3, we discussed a water safety plan, in that we would welcome a comprehensive water safety plan which incorporates the use of lifeguards for the duration of the event. And number 4, we would welcome a comprehensive traffic management plan.
Can I stop you a second? Very unorthodox to go out of sync. This is a question directly to the applicant. On Friday, the 1st of December, I know the licensing department received an email from Tommy at Tunes and the Tunes Festival. Its contents is fairly in line with what Sergeant Dix has just set out. Because it hadn't been confirmed, and or the email didn't specifically request that this email be included or released to all of the parties this morning, it hasn't been. But do you wish that, and I've got copies of it here, do you wish that that email therefore be handed out to the members and all persons here? This, perhaps at this point might be appropriate, because it does align with what the officer is saying. Yes or no from you, please. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, that's fine.
Yes? Okay.
Yes.
Do you understand that?
Yeah. Okay. And then please carry on, officer.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, reading these now, I mean, this is consistent with the meeting, and you know, I'm happy to support the application as amended.
Are there any other concerns within your letter, which was at page 178, which are outstanding, or have you now? I suppose on the basis you say you now support, unless you.
Yeah, the points that we've agreed upon really sort of deal with the concerns I had when I initially submitted the reps. So as I said, I would support the event on the basis of what the 4 points we've agreed.
So to be clear, for the committee, are you withdrawing the objection that you initially raised? Yeah.
I'm withdrawing it on the basis the applicant has now formally adopted my suggestions. Yes, thank you.
Thank you for that.
Yes, members, if you wish to ask the officer. Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, sorry. I understand now you've withdrawn the objections. My concern is, and I do understand that it says at point number 2, we will honour all reasonable requests for SPS and the provision of resources in Zone X. One of the things that you put in your original concerns was that there are a lot of other events happening at the same time, Millwall and a Cardiff event and so on. Even if the applicants are willing and able to pay for SPS, have you got, or are you able to confirm that you would have the bodies, the staff, to be able to address this?
Yes. I think because of the wording of the new condition with SPS, I think that goes a long way to addressing that. It is a busy weekend. It will be a challenge for police. However, you could view the fact that there's a football match as a positive in a way, in that there will be dedicated resources for that match that could be redeployed elsewhere if needed. So there would be a lot of officers already on duty who could be retained on duty further if needed. So, you know, it can be viewed as a positive. So that, taken with the new condition about SPS, then yes, I'm confident we would have the resources that we need.
And would you have discussed that wider with your colleagues, the inspectors and the local policing around the area?
Yes, I'm quite fortunate, really. My line manager is also a PSU commander. So, you know, has a detailed knowledge on public order situations. So that's a conversation I've already had.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair.
I can't keep coming back. Sorry, I've done it twice now.
What?
This gentleman.
Sorry. No, it's a question for Sergeant Hicks. But we, yeah,
I do apologise.
yeah, sorry. It's just that little bit surprised, to be honest with you, Sergeant Dix, that it's a very brief update for so many concerns that you raised in your report. So I was a little bit taken aback when you just came forward now with 3 or 4 points just to say, well, I'm now withdrawing on the basis of this. And as my colleague has mentioned to you, you know, on the wider scheme of the fact that there are so many events happening in Swansea on that weekend. And I can understand where you've said that you are that it could be a benefit because you could redeploy people quite quickly. But one of the items that you had was actually about the date, and I wondered whether you'd had any discussion with the applicant about changing the date, and we note that there is a rolling, that there is a note in here that the date could be rolled at some point. But I wonder whether something specific was actually mentioned about changing the date. And I think one of the other items is you were quite clear about the boundary of Zone X, and it was one of the questions that I was going to ask of the applicant as well, is, you know, it's like, how long is a piece of string? At what point? Where are we looking about? Because although the sports guidance says the extra mile, a radius of a mile in Swansea is a very large area from that point. So, so perhaps you could share your reasons why you sort of like not now feel that that is a problem.
Yeah, certainly. In relation to the date and that particular weekend, it is a busy weekend. However, most of the weekends throughout the summer are. So I think if it was to move to another weekend, there would be an equal number of difficulties. Also, because of the proposed site on the beach, it's also further limited in terms of tides, specifically low tide. So that would further decrease the available window. To be fair to the applicant, they have offered to move it. However, taking all things into consideration, I feel that it probably should go ahead on the proposed date for the reasons I've already said in relation to the public order officers. And yeah, in relation to the second point, then the Zone X, I agree with you. If and this was one of my I sort of wrestled with this for quite a while. If the application was for Singleton Park, for example, and we know what we're dealing with, we got tried and tested formulas for policing that. It wouldn't be an issue. But putting a large event on a beach does create issues, which is why I was insistent that we'd get the SPS condition right so it can be resourced properly. But also why I'd support a 1-year event in that as a test event, so that then we could, to see how that first year goes, and get the resourcing levels right and learn lessons for it, and then reconsider after that. I have a lot more confidence in the fact that it is a 1-year event than an indefinite event.
Thank you, Chair. So to follow on from the comments, representations that that was submitted on behalf of my team, I say last week we also spoke with Mr. Job online to discuss the comments that we had raised, and having seen the email now, correspondence from the police, to sort of go through the points that we put forward. Yes, Mr. Job did agree with the time limited 1-year application, so that sort of addresses our first point raised. And then if you look at my second, fourth and final point are covered by the email, then the agreements with the police for SPS in Zone X, but also working with preferred water safety contractors with regard to event goers and risks raised by what is quite a large tidal reach of a beach, and knowing quite well how quick it comes up, having worked on that beach for many years. We also discussed obviously potential pollution risks due to toilets, litter, importantly fuel. We also discussed catering waste, and Mr. Job has confirmed that full information will be submitted through the SAG process from their experience, and Mr. Job will correct me later if I'm wrong, but any caterers they use, for example, know the standards that they require, and if they don't meet them, they are not allowed on site or they are not used. So there are positions and measures in place to ensure that there aren't spillages, that waste is appropriately contained, but all that will be submitted during SAG so that we will have sight of it ahead of any build. Also confirmed a potential 8-day build to demob phase as well, to give us an idea as to how long they might be on the beach as well. So the final point left there that we discussed is obviously the noise that is produced from an event of this type. So the applicant is referring to a code of practice that we use at Singleton Park. It's a 1995 document that's currently going through a revision, but that 65 dB music noise level, which is a 15-minute time average, is what we use at Singleton Park, and discussions were had there where we reminded that it's, if exceeded, there are repercussions, but you know, appropriate information and responses were received to sort of identify the understanding of when you're approaching that threshold, at what numbers, for example, decibels, where action would be taken. And they confirmed to us that yes, obviously they will work with us, like we do with other events in the park, for example, to ensure that this music noise limit level, is adhered to. The timing wise, I'm not aware that a date is fully defined at this time. Obviously in the build up to conversations, it was still being sort of worked out with regard to everything else that's been discussed here today. There is a potential issue of a cumulative impact here where we are, but we will treat as we do all events, and we will work with them on the noise consultants that they will employ, the hotline, etc., that will be there in place. There were other comment just that I would ask for clarification on within the events management plan, section 17 under noise management. 3 lines, 3 paragraphs there. Paragraph 1, the event organisers will do all they can to limit inconvenience to neighbours. I would prefer, I will want to see what that actually means. I know we discussed various bits and pieces, but I want it spelt out and received for transparency, please. Obviously, we will have to agree under paragraph 2 here what outskirts of site is. So yes, an agreement from the applicant was that, you know, the monitoring locations will be agreed with us, with the environmental health officers. Contact number as well for a complaint line, but I would want to see information from them with regards to what a reasonable adjustment is. Is that what I want or what they perceive as being reasonable themselves? So that's something that we would need to clarify. So that's a question as well for you there, Mr. Joe. But having seen that email now that's come through between the organisers and the police, it does sort of address some of the points that were raised, and I'll refer to you for any questions.
Thank you for that. So you're in exactly the same position as the police withdrawing, or to a degree?
To a degree. We haven't done this before in this location, all right, hence the 1-year approach for us. We would be applying the music noise limit level, that we do in other events of this nature. So I'd say a lot of the points, yes, are being squared away by the conversations they've had with the police, certainly for the Zone X work. But yeah, I have a concern. I don't know how it's going to go. I know it's going to be difficult. We have competing noise sources in the area, which will make monitoring that M&L quite difficult. But that's something that we can work with. We can work towards. But there's the potential that they may not be happy, as we did discuss, Mr. Joe. You know, you may not be happy with what we want, and vice versa. So, but a working arrangement is the only way that can be carried out. And that's what we do in the park, for example, when we deal with the consultants there as well. You know, it is a dynamic position, a situation, but it's one that does work and would have to in this scenario. But until year 1 is done, you know, I'm not able to actually tell you exactly at this point, unfortunately.
And of course, this actual application is for almost 50% more capacity than, say, Escaping the Park. I checked with the ladies this morning in the briefing.
So 10,000, this is for a day, though.
10,000 in Escaping the Park, and this is one short of 10.
So in conversations, it's Mr. Job sort of said potentially a year 1 would be a test year. So capacities may not reach the 10,000, but that's what's being applied for, obviously, at this time.
Thanks, Mr. Price. Just where we're looking at the sound use, your 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth bullet point, the likelihood of additional sound sources, for example, amplified music from premises in the area. But that would be no different to when there have been events in the park, because you're always going to have those additional sounds, aren't you, from premises? So what would be different about this application as regards, you know, any other event that we have, like, for example, as I said, I'll use Singleton Park as an example because that's the closest event area. So how do you overcome that on those occasions?
Well, firstly, there is no difference. I've written it here in the representation because it's a concern of mine for this particular application. We manage and respond to complaints that are received. We have sound levels sort of set as guidance and enforced in certain premises, for example, that we will monitor against. But it's another resource then that we have to account for on the night in question, for example. Depending where that noise source is, it might impact a different element of the residential use in an area, for example. There are various premises along this run, as it were, that are likely to have an event of their own to build on the fact that there's people present, additional people present. And that's the concern for me, is that the location that you have here on the prom overlooking a terraced fenced area on the beach is potentially likely to draw non-ticketed individuals who will hang around on the prom. That would fall under the Zone X and the SPS that's being looked at. However, those people may well be frequenting other establishments that may not have had a gig that night, but are going to that day. So it's an increase in noise activity, and it is no different, you're right, to any other event that would be in the park, for example. We would have to address it the same.
Just one further question. You mentioned yourself about telephone number for the public to be able to phone. Now, I noticed that with the applicant has said that they will put it on their website. So would that also be required to be given to Swansea Council so that anybody phoning the council up would be able to have? And I can see one of the applicants nodding behind. So
yeah, we would have that. We would have that number like we do with other events now, and we would be in contact with the organisers, with the consultants throughout the event, as and when required, via phones, texts, phone calls, WhatsApp groups, whatever it is, to keep that the communication going, because we would be out monitoring as well, like we do in events now. So there would be full communication between partners.
Thank you. A concern I have is the management of the litter, not within the boundary of the event, but outside of the boundary of the event. You're on as you well know, you are on a direct line to Wine Street and everywhere from, you know, to that beach. And of course, people are going to be carrying glass bottles and so on from venue to venue. What provision, or are you going to be in discussion with the applicants here regarding to ensure that the litter and maybe glass, all sorts of things, are going to be collected around the beach area?
Use of glass, etc., and types of receptacles used for consumption would fall under colleagues from licensing, with various conditions there at point of sale, shall we say?
Right.
Okay. It may very well be that it's something for the applicant to deal with if they're going to add additional bins or something like that, but it is outside the event in any event.
Even though it's within Zone X?
I think when we get to the applicant, they've made comment in relation to the document as to an area.
Mm-hmm.
I think your answer might come from later on in the committee.
Thank you.
So something that it may arise later in deliberation, but there was comment, Mr. Price, in relation to repercussions if the decibels were reached. What would the repercussions be?
We would look on if the M&L was looking like it was going to be exceeded, because the M&L is a 15-minute time weighted average, okay, in TBA, effectively we would have ongoing discussions, and if it was certainly looking like the M&L was going to be exceeded and the applicant was not going to be switching the levels down or dropping down levels or doing as we asked, we would certainly be looking then through the groups on the day that we would be taking measures to actually pull that level down to where we wanted it, or certainly looking at what powers exist for us to actually switch it off.
Thank you, Mr. Price. So we go to the licensing authority.
Thank you, Chair. As the licensing authority, responsible authority, you've obviously seen our representation at page 187. Just want to take you through a number of the headers within the representation that still stands. The proposed condition number 11 includes the need for a traffic management plan, which is absent from the event safety management plan currently. And as the proposed location of the event, as authorised in the representation at Appendix D3, is adjacent to Mumbles Road opposite St Helens Cricket Ground, the detail or assurance of the detail of such a plan is required from the event organisers. As we know, this area is a busy thoroughfare from the east to the west of Swansea on a normal day, increasing during summertime with the public head into the Mumbles area. And it is submitted that should the licence be granted today, that the amendments to the timings in the conditions proposed are made in order for sufficient time for all agencies and authorities representing the Safety Advisory Group adequate time to consider. So this proposal would need appropriate amendment to condition number 2 specifically. A minimum of 3 months is not adequate preparation time for an event of this type and size in a location which has not been used for this purpose previously. And we suggest that this is increased to 4 months. Condition 9, requiring the event management plan to be sufficient, be increased from 56 days to 4 months, also for the same reason. The traffic management plan must include details as to how artists will be transported to the backstage area on the beach, taking vehicle and pedestrian conflict into account. And as such, an additional condition requiring the event organisers to address this point is suggested. And for example, Chair, the premises licence holder will include the details of the traffic management plan for the beach to avoid vehicle and pedestrian conflict to ensure public safety at all times. And we'll submit these just after our representation. Staying with proposed condition 11, it is suggested that a dispersal policy is added to the list of subjects. It's accepted that it already includes an egress plan for the site, but the dispersal policy will encompass egress from the site and through Zone X. And with this in mind, it's also suggested that condition 49 is also amended to include the dispersal plan in addition to the egress plan mentioned. The traffic management plan will need to address the transport provision to and from the event, as this remains absent from the event management plan submitted. We note the absence of a water safety plan, which has been mentioned by South Wales Police, and suggest that this is also added to condition 11 as a requirement of the licence. As outlined in our representation at page 188, an additional condition is also suggested that should the licence be granted to ensure no event is held during any high or spring tides, and a comprehensive water safety policy be in place and implemented. Our representation refers to condition 34, which is now condition 71 in the bundle at Appendix C to this report. We're aware that the RNLI references are incorrect, as the RNLI do not patrol Swansea Bay, and therefore the document should be amended to reflect that and replaced with the independent water safety provider that has been circulated this morning at point 4. It is also suggested that provision is made for water safety to be in place for the duration of the event and not until 6 p.m. as suggested. And again, I note that that's been amended at point 4 in the document that's been circulated this morning, so that own lifeguards until the end of each day's events from 6 p.m. when the RNL lifeguard is operating and from 12 noon on days when the lifeguard service is not operating. So I think that's really important because the RNLI lifeboats do not patrol Swansea Bay. They have to be separated and be available for emergencies only. Now, RNLA lifeguards are separate to that entity. And if discussions are taking place with the organisers and they are going to provide that provision, that's great. But I think we should have a fail-safe really, where we have independent provision also, should they not be available. So therefore, an additional condition be added to the licence should it be granted would be suggested. Mention of Zone X is made in the document ESMP. However, this needs to be added to condition 11 and be sufficient to address the outside areas of the event. As Councillor Joy has just mentioned about litter, etc., that will then encompass the whole issues. As with all local events attracting headline artists, people will congregate outside of the official event site itself and need to be catered for in every respect. As an event of this size and type has not been held in Swansea Bay previously, as outlined in our representation, we suggest this licence is for 1 year only on public safety grounds, as outlined in our representation on page 188. And I also noted that has been accepted by the organisers as part of the circulation document this morning. And it's on this basis that our representation on behalf of the licensing authority, responsible authority, is made. Annie, my colleague, will just read those conditions and we're happy to circulate them as part of the Teams meeting so that everybody has access to them.
So may I raise this, that if those conditions are circulated and the applicant were to say yes, they would agree to those, would that mean that you would agree and withdraw your rep, or would that be?
Yeah, they are the concerns that we've made in a representation that have been enhanced today. If there is acceptance by the council by way of the grant of the licence and the acceptance by the organiser, then yes, but only at that point.
Can I ask that they be circulated sooner rather than later then, so that when the applicant has their opportunity to make their comment, that they can include or comment upon what you've put forward?
Yeah, of course. So I'll just run through the conditions that we would ask be considered. So condition 2, we would like it to be considered to change from a minimum of 3 months to 4 months. Condition 9, we would ask that a change be made stating 4 months as opposed to 56 days. We would ask an additional condition we put on the licence wherein the licence holder will include the details of the traffic management plan for the beach to avoid vehicle and pedestrian conflict to ensure public safety at all times. We would ask that condition 11 also include a dispersal policy, a water safety plan and mention of Zone X. We would ask condition 49 also include a dispersal plan. The traffic management plan will need to address the transport provision to and from the event. We would ask an additional condition be considered stating no event is to be held during any high or spring tides and that a comprehensive water safety policy is to be in place and implemented. We would ask that condition 71 be amended to an independent water safety provider should be put in place of the RNLI or as well as the providers that have been highlighted in point 4 of the document that has been distributed this morning. And also that an additional condition is made on the licence that provision is made for water safety for the duration of the event and not time limited to 6 PM. And I'll circulate those this morning.
Thank you for that. Does anyone have any questions for the officers, please?
I think it would have been helpful perhaps to have the amended conditions in front of us so that we could discuss it and perhaps perhaps we could defer to sort of like go back to officers when we have actually looked through them as well. And I am concerned that the applicant may have written them down now, but they need to see them. They need to have an email.
Chair, we will circulate them now on the Teams meetings. They'll be available to the applicants and yourselves.
With the chair's leave, it may be that after the questions to the licensing authority, or before the applicant gives their application and comment, perhaps we'd have a short adjournment for the applicant to be able to review what has just been put, because there is a fair amount there, and I do want you to have time to take it in and vary or whatever you want, modify if you so wish. But we'll get to that point shortly then.
Chair, if I may, I did exclude the fact that we had also met with the organisers last week and discussed the points within our representation.
They are aware of these factors that you're bringing forward.
The factors, yes, but not the actual conditions. They should be on Teams now in the chat.
I have one more that you can.
Yeah, we can do them in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chair,
Chair, if you'd allow, we'll copy them if we have a short adjournment.
So if we say we'll be back at 11:05, would that be enough time for you to do it? Or would you prefer another 5 minutes?
11:05 is fine.
11:05,
Chair.
there we are. Okay, so we'll adjourn back at 11:05, okay?
And the applicant, can you see the proposed amendments and modifications of the conditions within the chat on your screen there?
Yeah.
There we are. Okay. Is that sufficient time for you to have a look at them and discuss?
Yeah.
There we are. Okay. So we'll say 15 minutes.
Yes, say 10 past then, back at 10 past. So if you want to go and stretch your legs. Have time, gentlemen, to look through the proposals, please.
Yes, yeah, we have, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Do any of the members have any questions on these conditions for the licensing authority? No, okay. I do. In relation to, right, let's go through it. So condition 2, raise it from 3 to 4 months. Now, what are we now? 5 months from the event? Oh no, a bit more. Okay, so they'd have a month really to decide upon a date. I'm just going through these so that the members can consider them then when they deliberate, okay? So the next one, condition 9, change from 56 days to 4 months. Now, condition 9 sets out that a suitable and sufficient event and site-specific event safety management plan will be developed. Well, we know it's been developed because there's one included in the report. In some ways, for everyone's sake, I perhaps say it is a draft report because it's not going to be completed until negotiations have taken place with SAC. But for site 9, so point 9, it goes on, will be developed and presented to SAG at least as per the condition currently 56 days prior to the events. Now, question I have on that is presented, finished, final version, or just simply a draft?
Chair, if I may, it's a fluid document. This document will remain fluid until the day of the event, even the hour of the event. So that's absolutely accepted. But what I would say is that we hold a safety advisory group every month, and the next meeting of the safety advisory group, which I also co-chair with my colleague David Price, who was actually in the gallery today, is on the 9th of January. And what I would expect to be developed and presented is that the items of which we've raised today in our representation be included in that draft by that point. So we have a draft management plan, we have a draft dispersal policy, and the Zone X. So it's developed and we've got a framework document to start working with at that point. Because it is a new site, it's a new location, we need to know some draft proposals at that stage. For example, would there be a road closure for a certain amount of time? Would that need to be discussed in more detail with the local authority for the numbers that we're talking about? What does Zone X actually look like? What are the parameters of that, and what does it include? Including, rightly being raised about litter perhaps being left on the beach. You know, how far would we expect the event organisers to be responsible for that time period, and what that time period actually is? So there's lots to be discussed in more detail, and we fully accept that to happen, and we wouldn't expect it just to be one meeting. There would be lots of meetings and lots of interaction with the licensing authority from that point on also.
There we are, because I was conscious that SAG might hold the applicant to hypothetically, if this were granted, that SAG could hold them to ransom if on that first meeting in January, what date did you say?
It's the 9th.
The 9th, that if certain points weren't there and weren't concluded. But would you expect the applicant to be there monthly?
We decide that really after the first item being discussed, really, of how often we need to meet them. We could actually have extraordinary meetings in relation to that event only on its own, depending on how many more events we are discussing, obviously, for the summer of 2024. We hold them as hybrid meetings, so again, it's easy to dial in. It's not something over onerous that we'd ask them to be here for, but if there were site meetings, obviously that's when we'd need the organisers to be in attendance.
There we are. I don't think I've got any further questions on the others. The others speak for themselves. And applicants, it'll be, well, I think you're going to be next really, and you can factor in your points when you're in the flow of your application shortly then, unless the members or anyone else has any questions on these proposed modifications.
No. Okay. Do either of you have any questions from anybody that's already spoken this morning? No? Okay, thank you. So now we come to the applicant. If you'd like to explain to us what exactly you're asking for in some detail, and at the end we will have questions. Okay? Thank you.
No problem. So, yeah, we're looking to hold a 3-day event on the beach on Swansea Bay, as pointed out in the application. All of the points that we've had that have been put forward there by licensing, we're happy with, and we've had all the conversations with everyone who's sat and who's put objections in, and we're happy to agree, and we're there to work with people and everyone. And we want to create a family event and something that's good for Swansea, that's good for the community, that brings money into the local economy. And you know, I think it's again very early days and stage with everything, and I think with the points and everything that's been laid out, the potential change could be the dates to allow us to move them back later, to give us more time, because we've only got one shot at this, to give us more time to make sure that all of the plans and everything are, the best that they can be. And yeah, that's in a nutshell. That's it from me. And I'll, Kev, you got anything you want to add with all the, because he's wrote up all the event plans and everything.
Okay, thanks, Tommy. Yes, I'm the event safety consultant for the Tunes events, and I think if we look specifically at some of those, some of the things that have been discussed today, we're really comfortable with those proposed conditions, and obviously they're things that we've discussed outside of the meeting in any case. There's a couple of things that we need to work through. I think the priority would be the traffic management plan, which would include that dispersal, those dispersal arrangements. And I think that would also start to inform what the Zone X arrangements would be. But in a very first kind of look at that, the Zone X that we would consider to be within our areas of responsibility are the beach, the promenade that's within view of the site, and the route from our main parking area, which we're considering to be potentially Singleton Park at the moment. But yeah, that will become clearer once we've got that traffic management plan in place. I think in terms of a date, the 4 months which we don't fall out with at all, the 4 months notice, that would leave us tight to work on that date in May, but we're not fixed on that anyway. And I think the fact that Millwall are visiting Swansea would be one of those reasons that, you know, we already considered moving the date to later in the summer. But around that date, there are kind of a few moving parts that we'd need to consider. The primary one is the tidal arrangements and not having it on a spring tide. In that condition, it mentioned high or spring tides. I just kind of asked for that to be amended and the high to be taken out, and because obviously there's a high tide every day, but we wouldn't consider having it on a spring tide, and we would only hold the event on a neap tide. Obviously our experience of working on beaches is quite extensive, but obviously not on this beach, which is where the advice from the RNLI would come in to give us that local knowledge on the tidal arrangements. So yeah, that's that bit. Really happy to work with our preferred partner around water safety, and we will be taking advice, as I said, from the RNLI, and we'll work on a water safety plan that will cover the duration of the event, as was discussed earlier. And the other moving parts, sorry, around the dates would be liaison with the police. So I'm really grateful for Sergeant Dix's interactions with us up until now, but we don't want to burden South Wales Police any further than we need to. So we would look at a date that would be suitable to them, also based around the tides and based around when we can get suitable artists to perform and make this event really good. So yeah, I've got nothing else I need to say at this point, but really happy to take questions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you both. I have to say the report was very, very comprehensive that you put through, and I was quite taken by the fact it's a family event. But obviously family events bring their own vulnerabilities for people who would come from the wider area. But my question is, why Swansea?
It's nearby. I think it shares similarities to Cornwall, and we're always looking around the sites. And I think the beach is a lovely spot, and it's in an area with a big city next to it. So I think financially for us, it could be a great event, and I think Swansea it could be as well. And yeah, I just thought we'd give it a go. Really, it's yeah, just, you know, if you don't know, you don't really You know, if you don't try it, you don't really know. So I think it seems like a great place. Yeah, Welsh people are great people, and yeah, just thought we'd yeah, that's in a nutshell. That's it, really. Yeah.
So had you been to Swansea before you thought about it, or is this something that you perhaps looked at a map and the dynamics? Because I'm just a little bit, you know, where you've had your events before, the locations are, the dynamics of the locations are totally different to Swansea Bay and the city. So I just wondered how you'd factored that in.
I think it's more, yeah, the beach events one, and the USP is it's a unique location. So I think that's the main appeal. And again, it is a bit different. But then the one in Perranporth Beach, I think Perranporth sees an average of 15,000 people a day on it. So again, you have everyone in the venue, and then you have everyone outside, which would be stood in Zone X. So it does attract a large amount of people, as this event will, who don't have tickets. So we're ready for that. But again, having a busy road next to the event is something that we've not done before, but it's something that, you know, we do one up in East Cornwall, which is 5-10 minutes away from Plymouth, so there's loads of traffic coming through, and we've worked on, we've never had traffic issues before, and we've always had extensive traffic management plans, so we're happy that our team that are very experienced in that area will be able to manage that. And yeah, I think it's got potential to be a really great event, and I feel like we could offer and bring something really, really good to Swansea that, yeah, would be great for families and great for the area.
You didn't mention whether you had actually been to Swansea.
Oh yeah, I've been to Swansea many times. Yeah, we met up with we had David Price Deer, who's up there, and then the council leader and a few other people up there who as a friend recommended about doing the event there before, and I've been there and been surfing quite a lot up there myself, and yeah, and in and around Wales. So yeah, I have been there.
Have you had any communications with the nearest venue to where you're proposing to place it? In other words, the Secret is the closest one, to see how they are, you know, how you're going to interact with them on that weekend.
Yeah, that's as soon as if the license is successful, that'll be that's where we're going to be working straight away. We'll be working within the local communities, and the cafe will be one. When we put signs up, the public notices around there, we popped in and said to them, are you happy for us to put them up? And we said that we'll be in to chat to them if the license is successful, and they seem really excited about it all. So that'll be the first port of call, because I feel like it's an event that would work really well for them as well, and we could mutually benefit from it. And we'll be working with all the people who know the area, so your local security companies, your sound companies, and you know, it won't be a big Cornish group coming in. We'll be working with, you know, Swansea traders, Swansea everything, to make the event as Swansea as we can, really. That makes sense.
Another question that I had was about the vibe that you're going to. You talk about it being a family event. Have you at this stage got any idea of the types of bands or the types of music that you are going to have on at this venue?
Yeah, so we look towards your fun sort of like family type acts. So already this year for other Tunes events, we've got the Kooks booked, McFly, Busted, Ocean Colour Scene, so basically Scouting for Girls, so basically very sing-along, fun family artists, rather than a heavy, some drum and bass artists like your Rudimental or Stormzy or Jason Status. They're acts that we avoid because they don't attract families and they attract trouble, and that's not really what we're about. We're about creating a good time for families and people, and you know, really creating good events. So yeah, that's the type of sing-along, happy, fun music is what we're looking at with the suggested names.
Thank you.
Can I ask you what other venues you'd considered? What other areas? Because you said you were keen to come to Swansea, but have you looked at any other bays?
No, this was the first one on the list, and this is we've not yet looked at any other spots. No, it's just this was the first one, and if this wasn't successful, we'd probably continue looking around. But for us, we thought this offered the best sort of opportunity and chance, and with the map and how it all plans out, it looked like it could be a really good event. So we sort of went for it straight away as soon as we saw it. We thought, let's give this a go. I think because there is things at Singleton Park, but I guess around, and then you've got a big festival in Margam in between here in Cardiff and Swansea and Cardiff, and then Cardiff's got a lot of big events there. So and Live Nation are quite involved there, which we wouldn't really want to interfere with. I think this was the first venue that we looked around that we thought, let's go for, that really stood out.
Thank you for that. The other thing I see that you're going to encourage people to use bicycles. Where are they going to put their bicycles when they go into the enclosure or whatever you want to call it?
Is that a question for you, Kev?
I think the detail of that will come out in the traffic management plan, but it's something we've been really keen to do before. Obviously, our green credentials work very closely with Surfers Against Sewage, local charity to us. So we try and limit our carbon footprint, and so we do encourage that. What we've done in the past is incentivize that with kind of money off products on site and that kind of thing. So it's something we would look at to do again, but where they would physically park would come out of the traffic management plan detail.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay,
Yes.
T-Room, yes, oh, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Only quickly, because raised in the representations that I made, it was just to ask you at this point then if you're able to, within the noise management section that you refer to in the AMP version 2.1, you make reference to limiting inconvenience to neighbours and reasonable adjustments will be made upon receipt of noise complaints. I was just wondering if you could go a little bit further in what you mean by that. What would you see as an inconvenience and what reasonable adjustments would you make?
Okay, I think the main text of that is that we don't want to upset people. We don't want to upset locals. We'd want to come back and do this event again, which is what we're proud of our record of returning back to events and keeping our local residents happy. So again, the detail of that will come out in our noise management plan with what's acceptable levels, but we're not gonna contest or fight against that. We'll work with yourselves and our noise management consultants, but the detail of that will follow.
Okay, thank you, Kevin.
I've got some clearing up questions. Dealing with the area of the event, perhaps have to do the caveat of every application's on its own merits, but you're predicting a maximum capacity one under 10,000. In relation to your other beach style events, so I assume that's only Perranporth, but what is the layout for that event compared to the Swansea event? Is that bigger, same size? And or could you tell the committee the actual dimensions of this Swansea event? Because the plans don't seem to have 100 meters, 30 meters, things like that on it.
Yeah, I can perhaps cover that. So the Tunes in the Dunes event on Perranporth Beach is limited to 7,000, which is down to the size of the beach available and the tidal conditions. Obviously, it's we get large Atlantic swells on that bay, so that limits the size that we can safely use. So we're limited to that. In terms of the event layout, the footprint will be very similar. We've got a style that we want to maintain of a main stage, a second stage, and then some activities for younger people and some DJ booths. And so we want the location in Swansea to look very similar to our event in Tunes. We've got some loyal customers that come to all of our events, and we would expect that some of those would travel to Swansea. So we'd want them to. It would feel like the event they're used to. But in terms of dimensions of the arena, until we know exactly the ticket sales, we can build the site to determine that. But the venue will be, or the capacity of the venue will be worked out on 2 people per square metre across the venue, which we know works for us on beaches, on the beach locations we've used in the past. So I can't give you at the moment the exact dimensions of the arena. Lots of that will depend on the tidal conditions of the event the date that we pick, and the amount of tickets we propose to sell.
Staying on the event area itself, what type of fencing is going to surround it, and what height? So is it going to be a Harris fence and you can see immediately through, or is it going to be blanked off, and how high?
So yeah, again, the way we normally build a site is a single skimmed Harris fence. So 7 foot fences with scrim around to mask view immediately against the panels, but clearly with elevation, as we'll have on this site in some locations, you will be able to view into the arena, but we'll position the stage and that scrim to minimise that. What I anticipate is having further conversations with the operations team in South Wales Police to fully understand what the level of antisocial behaviour, if any, we're expecting in that zone X area, and it might be that we double skin that Harris fence line, so have in some areas have 2 lines of fence, and I know we have had some discussions around steel shield. That's not something that we would anticipate in requiring, but it is something we'd consider if we get that risk assessment from the police that would be necessary.
Also then, when we look at the plan of the event, I note that there's 3 exits, but then perhaps can I assume that the main entrance is on that easterly edge? Is there going to be one entrance or multiple entrances?
Yeah, no, there'll be one entrance, and then a minimum of 2 emergency exits, depending on the maths of how many people we've got on site. And the beauty of having a Harris perimeter is you can break the fence to create exits wherever we kind of require them. but
Okay.
obviously they would be maintained and secured and staffed.
So there was a seaward facing exit. That's going to be, is that purely for emergencies, or would that allow people to leave on at the end of the event?
So my expectation around what that would look like is that all entry and exit would be via that easterly point, and the others would be emergency exit points only.
Great. These are, I'm going to comment on things, it's for you to answer. They're not effectively licensable conditions, but there's been mention of litter outside of the event. Would you be providing additional bins and private disposal and collections?
Yeah. So we'd have a team of litter pickers, whether they're probably a blend of volunteers and paid staff to do that. And as I mentioned before, we work closely with Surfers Against Sewage, so it would be massive shot in the foot on own goal if we leave loads of litter along the beach. So it's not something we want to do. And you know, we're used to working in that beach environment and understand the sensitivities around that.
Great. Two more points. I saw reference to festoon lighting, but I couldn't see on the plan as to where that would be. I assume, well, is it external to the event and the lead to the?
Yeah. So there will be a run of festoon through the site. No, it's a elongated site, so we run that festoon light to create atmospheric route through the arena, but also part of that Zone X planning around how we keep people safe on the main routes back to where we're going to park them. So there will be some festoon lights probably along the beach, and then we're hopefully rely on street lighting for the rest of that Zone X area. But where there isn't lights, we'll provide them.
And finally, I think perhaps it'll be part of your transport plan, but well, actually, I'm going to split this into, are you going to have members of staff external to the event dealing with management as well as an internal, or will it be purely?
No, I mean, again, looking at what we've done in previous events, you know, those potential areas of conflict around bus pickups, taxi drop-off and pickup points, we'll provide security at those. We'll provide some marshals as wayfinding, kind of pointing people in the right direction, and around the Zone X area of the beach, we'll have security patrols there, and as we've already talked about, some water safety protection as well in those areas. So yeah, we won't limit ourselves to inside the fence line.
Again, following on to the thread of probably for the transport plan, but have road closures been, or are they a consideration?
They're not high on our consideration at the moment, but we're yet to fully engage with a preferred traffic management company, which is JPS Consulting, who are really experienced. I think some of the events they do the on-site traffic management at Glastonbury Festival in its entirety, and do the off-site at Boardmasters as well. So and loads of other events around the country. So they're the people that we'll take that advice from.
There we are. Okay, thank you. I don't have any further questions, Chair. There is one point I do need to raise if we're about to close. There was a representation from Councillor Peter May. You'll note he hasn't attended. I've emailed him at the start of the meeting to see if he's going to attend. He simply says he sent an email yesterday giving apologies. Sorry if that didn't get through. He hasn't developed anything further as to whether or not he wants to say more or less than what's in his representations. I commented at the start of the committee that effectively that they were a bit of question and answers. I think the reality is between all of the responsible authorities and their comments and the applicant, it appears that most of the questions he's provided have been answered. So I think I would say the advice would be take his representations as read to be considered as part of the deliberations from the members. However, I note Councillor Philpott has raised her hand.
Yeah, just one of the points that Councillor May raised on his submission, it was section 4, and it was read the crime and disorder point 7. Prohibited items will be discussed and agreed with relevant key stakeholders. In all cases, illegal substances, weapons, hazardous substances, fireworks and flares will not be permitted into the events. But then what he's asking is, what about the immediate area around the event? So this is our Zone X again, isn't it? Because Swansea Bay is quite a popular place for fireworks, etc. So and I suppose this is part of the antisocial behaviour plan with the police, to be able to say, right, well, you know, we can't have, but what you know, is this something that will be discussed in SAG? Because I think it's a really relevant point about, you know, the safety afterwards. You know, if you've got a lot of crowd and people start letting off fireworks, then, you know, it's bad, isn't it? So so I just think if we could have, whether it's taken into the SAG or whether we put a condition on, but I do think that has to be addressed.
I know Officer Dix is poised to answer you there, but you've actually made me remember a point. I think the answer is yes, SAG will deal with that in any event. But I think Councillor May has raised that point because in the application there was reference to post-event closing fireworks. I think so. Applicants, is my recollection correct that you're proposing to have closed fireworks? No.
Unlikely, and it's not something that we would want to pursue.
There we are. Okay, well, Councillor Philpott, yes, I think it would fall part of the SAG.
How do we know though? So, sorry, Chair, but you know, it's down here, but we haven't sort of mentioned it. So can we put this forward as a requirement for SAG to consider that? Yeah, okay.
So does anyone on the other side have any questions for the applicant, please? Yes, Sergeant Dix.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a couple of the points raised, really. I'd welcome an early discussion about potential dates if the 3rd to 5th of May isn't going to be the date. We would want to avoid any other clashes. So if we could have that discussion early and certainly before the first SAG meeting, that would be very beneficial. And secondly, as it's been raised, the issue of fences, I can tell you at this stage we've got concerns about single heiress, and we'd be looking for something a lot more substantial than that, more towards a steel shield kind of option. But again, something normally which is thrashed out in SAG, but as it was mentioned, I just want to put my views on record here. Thank you.
Chair, just in way of assistance, if the licence is to be granted today, can I make another suggestion for a condition? Just based upon what's been circulated from the organisers this morning, the licence is granted for a one-off event of a maximum of 3 days, Friday to Sunday, during 2024 or 2025, as agreed by SAG, and I think that would then support what Sergeant Dix has stated.
If you'd like to just summarise and sum up, please, then we'll go into closed session. This is to the applicant. Mr. Joe, if you'd like to.
I think he's just clear. Applicants, can you hear us?
Oh yeah, can I?
Yeah.
We're just inviting you now to summarise and close off your application, if you so wish. And then the members will go into closed deliberations.
Yeah.
Go on,
Yeah. Yeah. I was just going to say, I think everyone seems to be on the same page, and yeah, we're happy with all the feedback we've had from everyone. It's really constructive, and all feels like it could create a really great event. So yeah, thank you for your time. That's it for me.
Thank you for that. So we're going to go into closed session now. Okay, and you will get the decision in writing within 5 working days. Okay, so thank you for all for attending this morning.